My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. Today we have another Serica for review. This is the 5303. Now I've been eyeing these for a long time and was able to find a nice deal on a used one, so I went for it. However, before we get to the review, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. For price and availability, as of the recording of this video, this watch is available on the Serica website for the price of 1,075 euros, which again at the time of this recording is about 1,150 US dollars. The case is 38.5 millimeters in diameter, 46 millimeters lug to lug, 12 millimeters thick, and then has a 20 millimeter lug width opening. Now on the stock bracelet, it weighs in at 111 grams. Now the case on this watch is fantastic. The lyre lugs have a beautiful swooping high polished chamfer. The rest of the mid case has nice brushing. The lugs curve down nicely, and then the case back is thin, so this watch will hug the wrist. The edge of the bezel and the crown are high polished to add a bit more flash to the watch overall. Finally, this slightly smaller size gives this watch a vintage feel and then is going to work really well on people with smaller wrists. This stock bracelet is really interesting. While they could have gone with a straight end bracelet, they use this integrated end link that gives the watch a much more cohesive look with the bracelet. That bracelet starts at 20 millimeters and the end link has a solid connection to the head of the watch. The mesh section tapers down to 16 millimeters. Now I was worried the end links would add to the true lug to lug distance, but the articulation of these end links across the back of the watch is excellent, so it is not an issue. The mesh is flexible and comfortable, and then the clasp can close at any of these small indents along the inside of the bracelet, so you can really adjust the bracelet very finely and also basically on the fly. The tail of the bracelet slides underneath, so the overall look when the watch is on the wrist is extremely clean. The only downside of this bracelet is that it's very difficult to thread the tail of the bracelet into the clasp. You will want to do this very carefully and preferably over a soft surface because it's very easy to drop the watch while putting it on until you get used to this bracelet. The screw-in case back will help provide a whopping 300 meters of water resistance and is quite plain with general information about the watch engraved around the edges. This watch is powered by the Soprod Newton. This is a hacking, hand-winding 28,800 vibration per hour movement with a 44-hour power reserve and a stated accuracy of plus or minus 4 seconds a day. It is also a very controversial movement. A much bigger channel than mine has called attention to a few problems with it. The first is they don't always reliably hack when you pull out the crown. And the second is that the minute hand can jump when you push the crown in or out. Now, this particular model doesn't have either of these two issues, but that is because I bought it used and asked the seller in detail about it beforehand. Buying used and asking is a great strategy to avoid Seiko QC problems as well, by the way. Now, while this movement does have some issues, accuracy is definitely not one of them. As you can see, it is running between 0 and plus 2 seconds a day in the dial up position, and then between plus 6 and plus 8 seconds a day with the crown up. The 8mm screw down crown is massive and I absolutely love it. While I wish it was signed, but I do understand Serica doesn't use a lot of branding, so maybe signing the crown would be a bit odd. At least the threading and unthreading action is buttery smooth, and then winding the watch has a great tactile feel. Overall, I just love how the crown looks on this watch, especially with its high polished, chunky knurling. The double domed sapphire crystal rises a touch proud of the bezel. Now the dome catches a bit of light around the edge, which sometimes gives the crystal that warm acrylic look. The dome also causes distortions when viewing the watch from an angle. The crystal on this watch I think is really just perfect for it and enhances the way the watch looks overall. The 120 click unidirectional bezel has a nice, slightly tactile, slightly soft feel. It's reminiscent of the action on a modern Seiko diver, but feels just slightly more refined. The pip at 12 lines up nicely with the dial. The insert on the bezel is a beautiful half ceramic, half stainless steel with minutes and a 15-minute countdown on the outer ceramic half, and then a 12-hour scale on the inner stainless steel half. This gives the bezel a ton of functionality and also just looks extremely nice. Now this dial is advertised as silver with a white galvanic tint. While it does have a very subtle silver shimmer, the dial reads to me as white mostly and even looks like enamel in certain lights. The chapter ring is black, which serves as a cool transition from the inner ring of the bezel insert. The cardinal positions have large loomed rectangles, while the rest of the hour positions are designated with lollipop style indices. This is such a striking and unique effect that adds even more character to this watch. The lume is heavily applied, which makes the indices pop just a bit more against the dial. For text, we have almost none other than the depth rating at 6, with a reference to a French submarine in red text below that. Serica and Swiss flank the 6 o'clock position, leaving the 12 o'clock area, where you would usually find branding, completely blank. With this minimal text and lack of a date, the dial is very symmetrical and has a clean but also very interesting look. The handset is finished in black lacquer, which gives them a deep black and slightly glossy look. I find they complement the ceramic part of the bezel insert very well, and then also really pop against the dial. The hour hand has a massive broad arrow that is loomed, while the minute hand is a long sword style that reaches perfectly to the edge of the dial. Finally, we have a very long second hand with a loomed lollipop towards the tip and a short counterbalance. This is a super legible handset due both to the shape of the hands as well as that lacquered finish. The lume is very solid, it's bright and responsive, and is quite long lasting, getting slightly outlasted by the Orient Star here, which also has incredible lume. So overall, really good lume on this watch. And here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. You can see those integrated end links give it a very cool look, and then I think this is a perfect size, both to capture that vintage feel, or if you just have smaller wrists and prefer a smaller sized watch. For pros and cons, let's start with the pros. First, I absolutely love the overall design of this watch. From the case with its lyre lugs to that split bezel, the oversized crown, the interesting dial, and those lacquered hands, the overall design of this watch is fantastic. Second, I love the bracelet for a few reasons. First, the choice to go with that integrated end link makes the bracelet look so much better and more cohesive with the head of the watch. And then second, the way the clasp works. This bracelet is essentially a quick adjust system. You can quickly make small adjustments to the bracelet very easily. Finally, I think they just nailed the size. It's perfect for that vintage feel and then works great on smaller wrists. As for cons, well, let's deal with the elephant in the room, and that's this Newton movement. I was able to find one that doesn't display any of the symptoms, but much like you gamble with Seiko and their QC issues, you might also be taking a gamble picking one of these up. While I understand the complaints, especially for a watch that is north of $1,000, I'm also sympathetic to a younger watch brand that finds itself in a difficult spot. In the end, you will either find the issues and the response of the company kind of turns you off the watch, or you might be like me and be so drawn to the watch that you seek one out anyways. So there you have it, the Serica 5303. What do you think about this watch? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you've been watching Just Watches.